So we've spent a lot of time talking about our DNA and more specifically our genetic code, those A's, T's, C's, and G's, and how those can code to produce certain proteins in our body and give us certain traits. Today we're going to start talking about a topic that we're going to spend a little bit of time on called mutations. And mutations are just when this genetic code gets altered to cause us to have different proteins being built. So a number of things could cause this, say exposure to ultraviolet radiation like the sun. It could happen as a result of our chromosomes not splitting up correctly in meiosis. A number of factors can cause your DNA to mutate or change, cause your traits to change. And today we're just going to talk about a very general category of mutations called chromosome mutations, when entire chromosomes get switched, and kind of look at how those can affect the traits that we have. So just a quick review about our chromosomes. Remember that we have 23 pairs of chromosomes because we get one from each parent. So of our 23 chromosomes, we get one from mom, one from dad, one from mom, one from dad, giving us 46 total. And remember that those chromosomes are that's our DNA. It's just been coiled up. You can see them here, all 23 pairs. So we're going to talk about when these chromosomes, the entire chromosome gets mutated. A chromosomal mutation is a change in the structure or number of chromosomes. And these mutations generally have large scales of effects. They affect many genes at one time. So they generally affect the traits of many different parts of your body all at once. And we'll kind of see some examples of that. So there are kind of 5 types of chromosome mutations, or I like to put them in 2 categories. The first category is changes in chromosome structure, so the shape of a chromosome, and that can either happen through a deletion, a duplication, an inversion, or a translocation, or we can have a change in the number of chromosomes, and that's called nondisjunction when that occurs. We'll take a specific look at an example of that. We're going to start to focus on these structural changes, this first category here, the deletions, duplications, inversions, and translocations. So we're going to talk about changes in the structure of a chromosome. Now, first, we're going to focus on deletions. These are the easiest to understand because they're exactly what they sound. Deletions occur when an entire chunk of the chromosome goes missing, right? So this could happen for any number of reasons. Like I said, radiation, UV light, or other forms of radiation, heat, viruses, anything else that can get in your cells, kind of like that, chemicals, can affect your DNA and cause you to lose pieces of your DNA. And then depending on what part of your DNA gets deleted, will depend on what sort of mutation occurs. And it's important to note that these usually don't occur in things that are already alive. Usually those cells just die. These will happen in sex cells, sperm and eggs, and get passed on to your children. So you don't really see the effect of these kind of mutations until you pass them on to your kids. So deletion, here's an example of a deletion. You might have your normal chromosome here. You simply just lose a part of it. Here's a great example of a deletion. You can see here I've illustrated a chromosome that has these genes, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And then over here, this might be a chromosomal deletion where we've lost the genes C and D, so they just get deleted out of the chromosome. So this would cause a number of your genes to be removed. You're not making those proteins anymore, so they can cause a number of pretty severe effects. A couple of examples. One of the most well-known examples of a deletion is called Prader-Willi Syndrome.
It has your name in it.
Yeah, well, it wasn't named after me, though.
Oh, all right.
It's when you have a piece of your chromosome number 15 deleted, and it causes an interesting trait. It causes you to always be hungry. So these individuals are constantly hungry, no matter how much food they eat. So generally, these individuals gain a lot of weight. Another example of a deletion chromosome is the Prader-Willi Syndrome. It's a deletion of the chromosome number 5. It causes mental retardation, and it also causes the children to make these kind of sounds that sound like a cat, hence the name. So those are just 2 examples of a deletion. The next kind of mutation that affects chromosome structure is called a duplication, which is exactly what it sounds like. A duplication occurs when a piece of DNA is doubled, right? So you might have several genes that get doubled. You can see here in this diagram, we've doubled this yellow portion of the DNA, so it's there twice. And you can see here I've done it again with the letters A, B, C, D, A, F, and G. Well, let's say we just copy C and D, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, and G. Now, you might not think that this has an effect because, well, I haven't lost any genes. They're all there. But sometimes making too much of a specific protein can just be as bad as not making a protein at all. So these still causes genetic diseases as well. One of the more known is this Charcot-Marie-Tooth. Again, a bunch of French people discovered this. But generally, it causes you to have a high arched foot, and individuals with this kind of genetic disorder typically can't walk. They're usually bound to a wheelchair, but the severity of that can kind of vary. So continuing on, other changes in structure, we have things called inversions. Inversions is when a piece of DNA is actually removed from the chromosome, flipped over, and then placed back in. So when that gene goes back into the chromosome, the genes are in reverse order. So again, there's no loss of genetic material, but a lot of our genes interact with other genes, and they do this by their location on the chromosome. So just by changing the location of a gene on a chromosome, you can have effects. And you can see here we've taken out the midsection of this chromosome, flipped it, and put it back in. That's an inversion. And you can see here I've done it with the letters again, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Well, let's say we flip the C, D, and E, A, B, E, D, C, F, G. That's an inversion. You can see here I've done it with colors. You're literally flipping just a piece of that DNA. And this causes other genetic disorders. A common one is four-ring syndrome that causes that cleft palate, which is kind of when your lip is all
you realize touching your own lip doesn't help them at all.
Yeah, well, they saw it, and other things. So those are all examples of chromosome structural changes. One more is called a translocation. So all the changes in chromosome structure I've talked about happen within a single chromosome. A translocation occurs when genetic material is swapped with another chromosome. So actually a piece of DNA from, let's say, chromosome 5 might make its way over to chromosome 3 somehow. You can see here they've color-coded it where a little piece of 3 is in 4, and et cetera, and a little piece of this chromosome that the number cut off is all the way over here. So this is an example of translocation. Pieces of these genes are switching spots completely on chromosomes. Common disease caused by this is lymphoma, or cancer of your lymph nodes, specifically in children. So those are all examples of changes in your chromosome structure. I said there was another category, changes in your chromosome number. So you might be familiar with this. So changes in chromosome number are caused by something called nondisjunction, which means that the chromosomes fail to separate during meiosis. So when we go to make our sex cells, remember that we're splitting up those 23 pairs to make a sperm cell or an egg cell that has half, 23 total instead of 46. Nondisjunction occurs, well, if you can see it here, these chromosomes are supposed to split up, half in this cell, half in that cell. Well, sometimes accidentally they won't split up. So one sperm or egg will end up with too many, and one will end up with too few. You can see an example here. This is a perfect example of nondisjunction, producing gametes with one missing chromosome or one extra chromosome. So each of these should have one pair of chromosomes. You can see there, or one copy of one copy of two. But instead, it might have one copy of one, second copy of one, and a copy of two. This one has 3, and this one only has 1. They should have 2 each. So they're just messing up the numbers of chromosomes that are going into your sperm or eggs. Here's an example of it happening again in meiosis 2. You can see it splits up okay here, but then this chromosome is supposed to split evenly. Well, it doesn't on this side. So this chromosome, this sperm cell actually has 1 too many, and this has 1 too few. You think about why this is bad. Well, if you remember, sperm and egg are supposed to come together to make a complete set again. So if each of these had 1 chromosome, this baby should have 2 chromosomes instead it has 3.
I love the diagram of the sperm cell.
Well, that way you can tell the difference between the 2.
The sperm cells are smaller.
Well, it's all perspective.
All right.
So you can see here that this baby has 1 too many chromosomes. We call it trisomic. So you got 2 from mom, 1 from dad. It should go 1 from mom, 1 from dad. So you can see that this happens somewhat frequently. And you can see that every cell in the baby's body will have 3 copies of that chromosome instead of 2. And so it's called trisomy. And a common one is called trisomy 21, where an individual has 3 copies of chromosome 21 instead of 2. they should have one from mom, one from dad. Instead, maybe they have two from mom and one from dad. So you have 3 copies of chromosome number 21. I'm going to just zoom quick. You can see this here. 1 copy of 1, a second copy of 1, 1 copy of 2, a second copy of 2. But over here on the 21st chromosome, they have 3 instead of 2. So we've got an extra copy of chromosome 21. And this commonly causes Down syndrome. I'll actually tell you that most chromosomal mutations will kill you. It's very rare that getting an extra chromosome or getting one less chromosome or getting part of your chromosome deleted, you ever survive. Most of the time, you'll die before you're even born. But if you do survive, you tend to have some sort of severe genetic disorder or abnormalities or something of the sort. An example is Down syndrome. This is probably the most common one that people can actually survive with when you have that third 21st chromosome. You have an extra 21st chromosome, causes Down syndrome. So those are just examples of some just genetic disorders, and we'll talk about more about mutations and kind of what causes them and other forms of them in a future class. But that just kind of gets started.